My daughter, Lily, begged me to leave right after my husband's flight took off. It was just another business trip, the start of another week of solo parenting. I stood on the porch, waving, as his familiar headlights cut through the darkness of our quiet suburban street and disappeared around the corner. I had no way of knowing that my entire world, the safe, predictable life I had so carefully built, would completely unravel before the moon reached its zenith. The routine was always the same. David would pack his single, efficient carry-on suitcase while I made him a final cup of coffee. He'd kneel down to hug Lily, his strong arms wrapping around her small 6-year-old frame, and promise to bring her a special present from wherever it was he was going. This time it was Denver. He'd kiss me at the door, his lips tasting of coffee and a familiar, comforting love. His last words were always the same. "Just another quick trip, honey. I'll be back before you know it. I love you." I loved him too. I loved the certainty of him. David was my rock, my anchor. He was a successful, if somewhat boring, logistics consultant for a large, faceless corporation. He was steady, reliable, and predictable in the best possible way. Our life was a quiet tapestry woven from school drop-offs, weekend soccer games, and comfortable, loving evenings at home. It was everything I had ever wanted. After he left, I herded Lily inside, beginning our own well-worn routine for the nights he was away. "Okay, little bug," I said, "bath time, then one story, and then it's off to dreamland." "Okay, Mommy," she said, but her voice was small, her eyes unusually wide. I chucked it up to the usual sadness of watching her father leave. I went into our master bedroom to turn down the covers and lay out her favorite pajamas on the bed. It was then that my eyes fell on it, and the first tiny crack in the foundation of my perfect life. There on David's nightstand, next to a half-empty glass of water, was his watch. It wasn't just any watch. It was a beautiful, heavy Omega Seamaster with a steel band and a deep blue face. The watch I had saved for a year to buy him for our 7th wedding anniversary. On the back, I had it inscribed, "My rock, my anchor, my love." He never ever took it off except to shower. He called it his lucky charm. The idea that he would forget it on a business trip was more than just unlikely. It was unthinkable. My first reaction was simple annoyance. He forgot his watch? I thought. My fingers hovered over my phone, my first instinct to call him to tease him about it. But then I stopped. He was already on his way to the airport and there was nothing to be done. It was strange, a small discordant note in the familiar symphony of his departure. But it was just a mistake. It had to be. I went to get Lily for her bath and found her standing in the doorway of her room, her small body rigid, her favorite stuffed animal clutched in a white-knuckled grip. "Sweetie, what's wrong?" I asked, kneeling down to her level. "Did you have a bad thought?" Her lower lip trembled, and her eyes, wide with the primal fear I had never seen in them before, were fixed on the front door. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling, "we have to go. We have to leave this house, now." A chill, completely unrelated to the evening air, snaked its way up my spine. This was more than just post-departure sadness. This was terror. "Honey, what are you talking about? There's nothing to be scared of. We're safe here. Daddy will be back soon." "No," she cried, her voice suddenly sharp, frantic. She grabbed the sleeve of my sweater, her small fingers digging into my arm. "Not Daddy, the other people, the monsters. I heard them." "Heard who, sweetie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm and soothing. "In the driveway," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously towards the front of the house. "After Daddy's car left, there was another car, a quiet one, and a funny clicking sound. They're coming for us, Mommy. I know it. Please, we have to go." My heart was now beating a little faster. She had a vivid imagination, but this was different. This was specific. A quiet car. A clicking sound. My mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation, but all I could do was try to reassure my terrified child. "Okay, sweetie, I have an idea," I said, forcing a bright smile. "Let's go look at the security camera footage on the computer. We can be detectives. We'll watch the video of the driveway and you'll see that it was just Daddy's car and no one else was here, okay?" She nodded, though her fear was still a palpable aura around her. I led her to the study and sat her on my lap, pulling up the app for our expensive, top-of-the-line home security system on the large monitor. "See?" I said, pointing. "Here's the event log." I scrolled back. "Here's the mailman. Here's you getting home from school. And here," I clicked on the event labeled Driveway Motion Detected, 8:15 p.m., the moment David had left. The video played, showing his familiar headlights, backing out and driving away. "See? Just Daddy." "After, Mommy. Look after." "Okay," I said, my voice still full of forced cheerfulness. I went to the timeline to scrub forward a few minutes, but it wouldn't move. I tried to click on the next 5-minute interval. Nothing. A small, strange error message appeared in the corner of the screen. No data available for this time frame. My blood ran cold. That wasn't right. A glitch or a system crash would show a corrupted file or a system offline alert. This was different. This was a clean, precise, and deliberate deletion. The footage from 8:16 p.m. to 9 p.m. was simply gone, as if it had never existed. Someone with a high level of technical skill had professionally and surgically erased the last hour of footage from our cloud server. I stared at the blank computer screen. The words "no data available" burned into my retinas. My daughter's small, trembling hand was still clutching mine, her fear a cold, tangible presence in the quiet study. The carefully constructed walls of my reality, the life I had believed to be so safe and predictable, were beginning to crumble, and I was terrified of what I would find in the ruins. My first instinct was to call him. I snatched my phone from the desk, my fingers fumbling as I pulled up his contact. David, the name that had always meant safety, stability, and love. The phone rang once, twice, and then clicked straight to his voicemail. "Hi, you've reached David. I'm either on a flight or in a meeting. Leave a message." The familiar, cheerful recording now sounded sinister, a lie broadcast from a world that no longer existed. "David, it's me," I said, my voice a harsh whisper, trying not to alarm Lily any further. "Something is wrong. The security footage. Lily is scared. Call me. The second you get this, you call me. I don't care what meeting you're in." I sent a follow-up text, my thumbs shaking. "Something is wrong. Call me now." A new, frantic energy seized me. The quiet, comfortable house that had always been my sanctuary now felt like a glass cage, exposed and vulnerable. I scooped Lily into my arms, her small body still tense with fear, and began a desperate, methodical sweep of the house. I moved from room to room, the click of each deadbolt, the snap of each window lock, a small prayer against the encroaching, unknown threat. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of leaves outside sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through my veins. The familiar shadows in the hallway seemed to lengthen and twist into menacing shapes. The house was no longer a home. It was a potential crime scene. As I was checking the lock on the back patio door, the landline phone on the kitchen wall let out a shrill, piercing ring. The sound was so unexpected, so alien in our cell phone-centric world that both Lily and I jumped. No one ever called the landline phone except for the occasional political survey or my out-of-touch great aunt. My heart hammered against my ribs. It rang again, a demanding, insistent summons. With a deep, shuddering breath, I picked it up. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely audible. For a moment, there was nothing but a low, humming static, then a series of sharp electronic clicks, like a distorted recording of a Geiger counter. A cold, metallic voice whispered, a single, unintelligible word in what sounded like Russian or some other Slavic language. And then the line went dead, leaving only the dial tone's monotonous hum. That was it. That was the final piece of proof. This was not a coincidence. This was not my daughter's imagination. This was real. The monsters were real, and they knew where we lived. Panic, hot and blinding, threatened to consume me. My instinct screamed at me to grab my daughter and run into the night. But where would we go? My mind raced, desperately trying to find a logical anchor in the swirling chaos. The watch, the security footage, the phone call, and David, my steady, reliable husband. Who was he? The image of him as a logistics consultant with his boring spreadsheets and conference calls now seemed like a flimsy, ridiculous costume. There had to be answers, and they had to be in this house. I took Lily to her room, turned on her favorite cartoon, and told her to stay put with a firmness that left no room for argument. "Mommy just has to find something in Daddy's office. I will be right back." I went to his home office, the room I had always seen as the epicenter of his boring, predictable work life, now felt like the heart of a dangerous mystery. I didn't know what I was looking for. I started with his desk, my hands pulling open drawers filled with the mundane artifacts of a corporate life. Branded pens, stacks of business cards, and expense reports for trips to Chicago and Houston. It was all so normal, so plausible, that for a moment I thought I was going crazy. Then my fingers brushed against the bottom of the deep filing drawer. It felt wrong. The wood was newer, smoother than the rest. My heart pounding, I emptied the drawer of its hanging files. I ran my fingers along the bottom surface until I found it, a tiny, almost invisible seam. I pressed down and a section of the drawer's floor clicked open, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. My breath caught in my throat. Inside the compartment was a small, tightly packed canvas bag, a go bag. With trembling hands, I pulled it out and unzipped it on the floor. The contents shattered my world. There was a thick, vacuum-sealed brick of cash containing stacks of US dollars, euros, and Japanese yen. Beneath it were 3 pristine passports, each with David's photograph, but with 3 different names: Michael Sullivan, a Canadian, Stefan Brandt, a German, and Ben Carter, an Australian. There was a small, simple, non-trackable burner phone, the kind you see in spy movies, fully charged. There was a set of keys attached to a fob for a car I had never seen before, a late-model Volvo. And at the very bottom, there was a single sealed envelope with my name, Jenna, written in my husband's familiar, steady handwriting. My fingers trembled so violently I could barely tear it open. Inside was a short, cryptic note. "Jenna," it read, "if you are reading this, it means I messed up, and I am so sorry. Trust Lily. Always trust your gut. The watch I left behind was the first signal. It lets my people know I'm in trouble. They can't help you yet, not until it's safe. Use this phone. Call the contact saved as the florist. He will help you. Whatever he tells you to do, you do it without question. Destroy this note. I love you more than anything. Protect our little bug." I read the note 3 times, the words blurring through my tears. My husband, the logistics consultant, the man who helped me with the groceries and coached Lily's soccer team, had people. He had a distress signal. He had a contact named the florist. The life I had known, the man I had loved and married, was a lie, a complete and total fabrication. My silent sacrifice hadn't been enduring a difficult family. It had been actively participating in a lie I didn't even know existed, sacrificing my own intuition on the altar of a comfortable suburban illusion. The fear was still there, a cold, coiling serpent in my gut. But now it was mixed with a new, terrifying clarity. I had no idea who my husband really was. I had no idea who was coming for us or why. But I had his final instructions, and I had our daughter asleep in the next room. My own identity crisis would have to wait. The monsters were real, and it was time for us to disappear. For a long moment, I could do nothing but kneel on the floor of my husband's office, the contents of his secret life scattered around me like the wreckage of a plane crash. The passports with their false names, the stacks of foreign currency, the untraceable phone, and his final cryptic note. Each item was a piece of a puzzle I never knew existed, and the picture it was forming was of a man I did not know and a danger I could not comprehend. The shock was a physical thing, a high-frequency current buzzing under my skin. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at the edges of my mind, threatening to pull me under. But then I heard it, a small, soft whimper from the other room. Lily. Her name was an anchor in the swirling vortex of my fear. It was a single, clear point of focus. The note in my hand was no longer just a mystery. It was a set of instructions, and the final instruction was the only one that mattered. Protect our little bug. The time for shocking grief was a luxury I could not afford. It was time to act. My first move was to follow his instruction precisely. I took the note, his familiar handwriting a painful reminder of the man I thought I knew, and carried it to the kitchen. With trembling fingers, I held a match to the corner of the paper and dropped it into the stainless steel sink. I watched as the flames consumed his words, turning his love and his warning into a fragile black ash. I rinsed the ashes down the drain, erasing the last piece of tangible evidence, my heart aching with the finality of the act. My old life was gone. Next, the go bag. It was a good start, but it was his, not mine. It was impersonal. My daughter needed more than cash and fake passports. She needed comfort. I ran to her room and grabbed her most cherished possession, a worn, one-eyed bunny named Barnaby. I added her favorite pajamas, a spare change of clothes, and the half-eaten bag of gummy dinosaurs from the pantry. I then went to my own room, grabbing our real passports, my emergency stash of cash from a shoebox in my closet, and a small framed photo of the three of us from our last, happy, blissfully ignorant vacation. I stuffed everything into a single, unassuming backpack. We would be leaving everything else behind. Waking Lily was the hardest part. I crept into her room and gently shook her shoulder. She was so deeply asleep, her face a perfect picture of innocent peace. Waking her up felt like pulling her out of a safe, warm world and dragging her into my own waking nightmare. "Maya, sweetie," I whispered, my voice gentle, though my heart was hammering. "Time to wake up. We're going on a surprise trip, a secret adventure, just you and me." Her eyes fluttered open, confused and bleary. "A trip? Where's Daddy?" "Daddy had to go on his trip early, honey, and he wants us to go on our own special adventure. But it's a secret, so we have to be very, very quiet, like spies. Can you be a super spy for Mommy?" Her eyes widened with a flicker of childish excitement, momentarily overriding her fear. She nodded. I quickly dressed her, my hands moving with the speed and efficiency I didn't know I possessed. Then, holding her hand tightly, we slipped, not out the front door, but through the dark kitchen and into the garage. The car keys from the go-bag felt strange and foreign in my hand. They didn't belong to my sensible family minivan. I pressed the unlock button, and the headlights of a dark gray Volvo sedan I had never seen before flashed in the darkness. It was parked in the far corner of the garage. His secret car for his secret life. Getting into the unfamiliar car, my hands fumbled with the controls. The garage door, usually so quiet, seemed to groan and screech as it opened, the sound echoing through the silent, sleeping suburban street like a scream. I backed out of the driveway, my eyes scanning every parked car, every dark window, my entire body braced for the sudden glare of headlights, for the squeal of tires. But there was nothing. The street was empty, peaceful. It was a terrifying, deceptive calm. I didn't take the main roads. I stuck to the dark, winding back streets, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Beside me, on the passenger seat, sat the burner phone. It felt like a malevolent object, a portal to a world I did not want to enter. But I knew I had to. After driving for what felt like an eternity, I pulled over, my heart pounding, and turned it on. The screen flickered to life, simple and anonymous. There was only one contact saved in the phone book, a single cryptic name, the florist. Who was the florist? A code name? A real person? A friend? An enemy? I stared at the name, my thumb hovering over the call button. But my father's instruction replayed in my head. Whatever he tells you to do, you do it without question. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I needed more distance. I needed to think. The decision was made for me by the flashing fuel light on the dashboard. The car, his secret car, was nearly empty. Of course it was. I had to stop. I had to expose myself. I took the next exit and found myself on a lonely stretch of highway. The only sign of life, a single, brightly lit gas station. An island of fluorescent light in an ocean of darkness. It felt like a trap, but I had no choice. I pulled up to the pump, my eyes scanning the empty parking lot. As I got out, the cold night air hit me, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. I was just a mom, in a hoodie and yoga pants, at a gas station in the middle of the night, with my terrified daughter in the back seat, running from a faceless enemy I couldn't begin to comprehend. As the gas began to pump, a man emerged from the shadows near the convenience store. He was so average, so utterly nondescript in his simple jacket and baseball cap that he was almost invisible. He started walking towards me. My body went rigid. My hand tightened on the gas nozzle, my mind frantically calculating if I could use it as a weapon. He didn't look at me at first. He just stopped a few feet away, pretending to look at the map under the station's bright lights. "Cold night," he said, his voice a low, even murmur. I didn't respond. He looked up at the sky. "The watchmaker is running late tonight, isn't he?" The words. The watch. My blood ran cold. This was it. This was him, the florist, or someone he had sent. I just stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. He finally looked at me, his eyes dark and serious. He took a half step closer, his voice dropping to an urgent, barely audible whisper. "You did well to get out of the house. They are on their way there now. And they are not the police," he said. "You can't keep this car. It has a tracker. You need to get off this highway. Your credit cards have been flagged. Your phone is a beacon. From this moment on, you are a ghost." He moved past me, pretending to head towards the store. As he did, his hand brushed against mine, and I felt the cold, hard press of a key being slipped into my palm. "There's a motel called the Pine Ridge Inn in Oak Haven, about 30 miles north of here, off Route 17. Room 7. This key is for a lockbox inside the closet. Everything you need for the next step is in there. Go now. Do not stop for anyone. Do not call your husband. We will contact you." And then he was gone, disappearing inside the convenience store as if he had never been there at all. I stood there for a second, my palm tingling where he had touched it, The small, cold key, a heavy weight of terror and confirmation. The monsters are real, and they are close. The gas nozzle clicked off, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent fluorescent glare of the deserted station. My hand was shaking as I replaced it, the cold, hard shape of the motel key a secret weight in my palm. The stranger was gone, having vanished as quickly and silently as he had appeared. For a moment, I was frozen, trapped between two impossible worlds. Behind me lay the smoldering ruins of my life, a lie I unknowingly cherished. Ahead of me lay a dark, unfamiliar road and a cryptic set of instructions from a man who knew my husband's deepest secrets. There was no real choice. There was only the road ahead. I got back into the unfamiliar Volvo, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I locked the doors and peeled out of the gas station, my tires squealing in protest. The stranger had said to take Route 17 north. I followed the instruction without question, turning off the main highway and onto a dark, two-lane country road that snaked through dense black forests. Every pair of headlights that appeared in my rearview mirror was a potential threat. I would hold my breath as they approached, my hands strangling the steering wheel, my body rigid, only to exhale in the shaky gasp as they passed me by. My daughter, my sweet Lily, was fast asleep in the back, her face peaceful in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, her one-eyed bunny, Barnaby, clutched to her chest. She was the only reason I was able to keep going, the only reason the terror didn't swallow me whole. My fear for her was a sharper, more focused thing than my fear for myself. It was a compass needle, pointing me forward through this dark, terrifying new wilderness. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I saw it. A flickering, lonely neon sign on the side of the road, half its letters burnt out, spelling P-N Ridge Inn. The Pine Ridge Inn. It was a classic, run-down roadside motel, a relic from another era, the kind of place people go when they don't want to be found. It was perfect. I pulled into the gravel parking lot, my headlights sweeping across a row of numbered doors, and there it was, room 7. I carried my sleeping daughter from the car, her warm, limp body a comforting weight against my own. The night was cold and silent. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under my feet and the distant rumble of a passing truck. The key the stranger had given me felt slick and cold in my trembling hand. It slid into the old rusted lock of room 7 and turned with a satisfying heavy clunk. I pushed the door open, quickly herded Lily inside and bolted it behind us, my back pressing against the cool wood as I finally allowed myself a moment to breathe. The room was a time capsule of anonymity. It was clean but utterly devoid of character. 2 double beds with thin, faded floral bedspreads, a dark, scarred wooden desk with a bolted-down television. The air faintly smelled of stale cigarettes and pine-scented cleaner. I gently laid Lily on the bed farthest from the door, tucking Barnaby beside her. She didn't stir. For that, I was endlessly grateful. My own exhaustion was a heavy cloak, but I knew I couldn't rest. Not yet. The stranger's words echoed in my head. The key is for a lockbox inside the closet. I moved to the small closet and found it immediately. A small, gray metal box bolted securely to the floor in the back corner. The key slid into the lock, and with a turn, the box opened. The contents confirmed I had not been dreaming. It was a second go bag, a professional one. Inside was the sleek, heavy satellite phone, a new set of car keys, and 2 pristine, official-looking document folders. My hand shook as I opened the first one. Inside were 2 new passports and driver's licenses. The photos were of me and Lily, taken from our social media profiles, but the names were foreign to me. I was no longer Jenna Miller. I was now Sarah Carter. My daughter was not Lily, she was Emily. Our old lives had been officially, legally erased. In the second folder was the final item, a single, black, encrypted flash drive. There was also a cheap generic laptop sitting on the room's desk. It was clearly part of the package. My heart pounded as I plugged the drive into the USB port. A single, password-protected video file appeared on the screen. The password was written on a small sticker on the flash drive itself. My anchor. The inscription from his watch. I typed it in and hit enter. The video opened. And there he was. My husband, David. He looked terrible. He was in a dark, undecorated room, his face etched with exhaustion and a deep, profound sorrow. The familiar, easygoing smile was gone, replaced by a grim, hard line. This was not the man who had kissed me goodbye just hours earlier. This was a stranger wearing my husband's face. "Jenna," he began, his voice a rough, tired rasp. "If you are watching this, it means that I have failed you in the most profound way imaginable. And I am so, so sorry." He closed his eyes for a moment, the pain on his face so real it was a physical blow. The life we had, the life I gave you, it was real. For me, it was the only real thing in a life of lies, but it was built on a foundation I could never share with you. I am not a logistics consultant, Jenna. My name is not even David Miller. I am an operative for a clandestine branch of our government. For the last 15 years, my job has been to infiltrate and dismantle international criminal and terrorist organizations. He took a deep, shuddering breath. My last assignment, it went wrong. Our cover was blown. The organization we were targeting, they are not just criminals. They are ruthless, well-funded, and they have connections everywhere. They know about me, and they know about you and Lily. The life we knew is over. You can never go back to that house. You can never contact our friends or your family. They are all being watched. He explained everything. The watch he left behind was an emergency distress beacon, a signal to his agency that he had been compromised. The deleted security footage was him covering his tracks as he left, trying to buy us a little time. The stranger at the gas station was his handler, the florist, a man whose only job was to protect the families of compromised agents. "Everything you need is on this drive," he said, his voice cracking. "Bank accounts that can't be traced, contacts for the next stage of your extraction, a new life, a safe life." Tears were now streaming down his face. The man you married, the suburban dad who coached soccer and forgot to take out the recycling, that part wasn't a lie, Jenna. That was the only part of me that was ever truly real. I love you, and I love our little bug more than life itself. He leaned closer to the camera, his eyes boring into mine. "Be strong. Be the fighter I always knew you were. Protect our daughter. Survive. Please just survive." And then the video ended, leaving me in the dead silence of the anonymous motel room, the glow of the screen reflecting in my own tear-filled eyes. The grief was a physical, crushing weight. The man I loved was gone, perhaps forever, and the life we had shared was a beautiful, elaborate illusion. But as I looked over at my sleeping daughter, her small chest rising and falling in the dim light, the grief began to recede, burned away by a fierce, primal fire. He had given me a mission. The old Jenna, the happy, naive wife, was gone. In her place was Sarah Carter, a mother, a survivor. I picked up the satellite phone from the lockbox, its weight feeling solid and purposeful in my hand. I didn't know where this road would lead. I didn't know who was hunting us. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. They had made a terrible mistake. They had taken my husband, but they had left his family behind. And a mother protecting her child is the most dangerous force on earth. My new life had just begun. An absolutely intense and suspenseful story that leaves us on the edge of our seats. What a powerful transformation from a suburban mom to a survivor on a mission. This story ends on a huge cliffhanger. What do you think Jenna's first move should be with the satellite phone? Let us know your theories in the comments below. If you loved this thrilling story and want more mysteries and suspense, show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell, Bing, so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. My parents looked me in the eye across the polished surface of their dining room table and told me they were selling my heart. They were selling the century-old family farm, the rolling hills I knew better than my own reflection, the ancient oak tree my great-grandfather had planted, the rambling farmhouse that held every happy memory of my childhood. And they were selling it all to fund my brother's ridiculously lavish wedding. They told me his happiness, a single day of extravagant celebration, was more important than our entire family's history. They had no idea that the wealthy, mysterious man they were selling it to was my secret business partner, and that I would be the one to give the final, binding word on the deal. The announcement came, as most of my family's decrees did, during a tense Sunday dinner. The air was already thick with the cloying sweetness of my brother Leo's self-satisfaction. He and his new fiancée, a woman named Tiffany, with diamonds in her ears and ice in her veins, were holding court, describing in nauseating detail the wedding they were planning. It was a production worthy of a royal family, involving a guest list of 300, a 10-piece band, and a custom-designed dress that cost more than my car. I had been listening in quiet disbelief, wondering how they could possibly afford such a spectacle. My father and my uncle's construction company, the business that had supported our family for 50 years, was, I knew, struggling to stay afloat. And then my father cleared his throat, and the shoe I had been waiting for finally dropped. "Kids," he began, looking at Leo and me, though his gaze slid past me almost immediately, "your mother and I have some wonderful news. We've been thinking long and hard about how to give you, Leo, and your lovely fiancé the wedding you truly deserve, a proper start to your new life together." My mother beamed, reaching over to squeeze Tiffany's hand. "We know things have been a bit tight lately, but some things are more important than money. Family is more important." The irony of that statement was a physical, bitter taste in my mouth. I felt a cold dread begin to creep up my spine. I knew what was coming. "So," my father continued, looking at me, his eyes full of a sort of preemptive apology, "we've made a decision. We're putting the farm on the market. We've already had a very generous offer from a private investor. It's more than enough to cover the wedding and give you a very comfortable nest egg, son." The room erupted. Leo and Tiffany were ecstatic, hugging my parents, their faces alight with greedy, triumphant joy. "Oh my God, Dad, you're the best!" Leo shouted. Tiffany was already pulling out her phone, no doubt to upgrade the floral arrangements. I just sat there, the fork frozen halfway to my mouth. The sounds of their celebration faded into a dull roaring in my ears. The farm. They were selling the farm. They were selling the porch swing where my grandmother taught me to read. They were selling the barn where my grandfather taught me how to drive a tractor. They were selling the creek where I spent my summers. The apple orchard that smelled like heaven in the autumn. The very soil that held the roots of my entire identity. "No," I finally whispered, the word a small, broken sound in the midst of their jubilation. They all stopped and looked at me, their happy expressions turning to annoyance. "What do you mean, no?" my mother asked, her tone sharp.
"You can't sell the farm," I said, my voice growing stronger. "Dad, that's Grandpa's legacy. It's our history. You can't just sell it for a party." "It's not just a party, Nina," my brother said, rolling his eyes. It's my wedding. It's the start of my future. And what about our past? I shot back, my voice rising with a passion I rarely showed them. What about Grandpa? What about everything he and Grandma built? We can find another way. I have savings. I can help. We can take out a loan. We don't have to erase our entire history for a single day of extravagance. My aunt's cruel words from years ago echoed in my head. Dreamy Sophie. Now I was sentimental Nina, the impractical one who cared more about old trees than her own brother's happiness. My mother's face hardened. Don't be so selfish, Nina, she said, her voice cold. Your little savings, as you call them, wouldn't even cover the catering for a wedding like this. You're just being jealous because your brother has found someone and is able to have the kind of celebration you never did. The cruelty of her words was breathtaking. She was right. My own wedding to my ex-husband had been a small, simple affair at a courthouse, but it had been my choice. To have her throw it in my face now as a weapon to justify this desecration of our family's memory was a new low, even for her. I looked at my father, my last hope. Dad, please. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared down at his plate, shrugging his shoulders. It's decided, Nina. Your brother deserves this. That was it, the final verdict. My brother deserved to have his lavish party, and I deserved to have my heart ripped out and sold to the highest bidder. I pushed my chair back from the table, my appetite gone, my soul aching with a grief so profound it felt like a physical illness. Excuse me, I said, my voice a choked whisper. I'm not feeling well. I fled their house, their renewed, cheerful chatter about wedding venues and honeymoon destinations chasing me out the door. I drove home in a blur of tears and a white-hot, impotent rage. They had dismissed my love, my history, my very being as simple sentimentality. They saw the farm as a simple asset to be liquidated. They couldn't see that they weren't just selling land. They were selling my soul. I sat in my own quiet apartment, a place that was modern, successful, and a world away from the dreamy girl they all still saw me as. I looked at the old framed photograph on my mantelpiece, a picture of me as a little girl sitting on my grandfather's lap on the porch of the farmhouse. His arm was wrapped around me, his face crinkled in a wide, loving smile. My tears subsided, and the grief in my chest began to cool, hardening into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. They had made their decision. They thought the sale was a done deal. They thought the final word was theirs. But my grandfather hadn't just taught me how to drive a tractor. He had taught me how to be patient, how to be strategic, and how to protect the things you love. I won't let them do it, Grandpa, I whispered to the photograph. I promise. They thought the story was over. But I knew the most important chapter was just about to begin. I sat in the sterile silence of my apartment, the echoes of my family's cheerful, dismissive voices still ringing in my ears. The rage and grief from the night before had cooled, coalescing into a hard, heavy stone of resolve in my gut. I looked around my home, a space I had curated myself, filled with clean lines, contemporary art, and books on architectural theory. It was the home of a successful, independent woman, a woman my family had never bothered to meet. To them, I was still sentimental Nina, the impractical dreamer with the useless art history degree, a perpetual supporting character in the grand, important story of my brother, Leo. This dynamic was as old as we were. Leo was the golden boy, the sun around which my parents' world revolved. His achievements, no matter how small, were celebrated with fanfare. His failures were cushioned, his mistakes excused. When he wanted a new car for his 16th birthday, they bought him a sporty convertible. When I turned 16, I was given a buzz pass and a lecture on the importance of self-sufficiency. When he scraped through college with a business degree and a C average, they threw him a lavish graduation party. When I graduated with honors and a departmental prize, they told me it was nice, but worried about my job prospects. I was always expected to be the understanding one, the one who didn't make waves, the one who would graciously step aside so that Leo's light could shine brighter. And for years, in the name of a fragile family peace, I had played my part. My true life, my real self, had been nurtured not in their house of shifting praise and quiet judgment, but in the rich, dark soil of the farm. While Leo had spent his summers at expensive camps or lounging by the country club pool, I had spent mine trailing my grandfather through the fields. He was a man of the earth, his hands calloused, his knowledge of the land profound. He didn't just teach me how to drive the old John Deere tractor. He taught me about crop rotation, about soil health, about the delicate ecosystem of the creek that bordered our property. He would let me sit with him in his dusty office as he went over the farm's accounts, explaining the slim profit margins, the gamble of weather, the hard-won dignity of building something with your own two hands. I loved the farm, not just for its beauty, but because I understood its soul, its struggle, its resilience. It was a living, breathing part of me. My useless art history degree had been a rebellion, a quiet insistence on pursuing my own passion, but it had also been my salvation. With the focus on architectural history and land preservation, I found my way into a niche, specialized field. I began my career at a firm that appraised historical properties for conservation trusts. I had a knack for it. I could see the hidden value in a dilapidated old barn or a forgotten Victorian manor. I understood that history itself had value. It was during an appraisal of a massive historical estate that I met him, Mr. Alistair Grayson. He was a self-made real estate magnate, a legendary figure in the industry known for his shrewd business sense and, more recently, for his philanthropic efforts in land preservation. He was the potential buyer of the estate I was appraising. He was brilliant, intimidating, and he saw something in me that my own family never had. He was impressed not just by my knowledge, but by my passion. He saw that I understood that land wasn't just a commodity. It was a story. He became my mentor. He hired me away from the appraisal firm, making me his personal consultant. And about a year ago, he had come to me with a proposal. He wanted to start a new, specialized venture, a firm dedicated to acquiring historic farms and agricultural lands, not to be broken up for suburban developments, but to be revitalized, restored, and turned into sustainable, profitable enterprises like organic wineries or ecotourism destinations. He wanted me to be his partner, not just an employee, but a silent majority partner. Grayson and Wallace Land Holdings, he'd said, using my mother's maiden name as a nod to my own legacy. You have the vision, Nina. I have the capital. Together we can save these beautiful places. I had kept my success a secret from my family. It was an act of self-preservation. I knew with absolute certainty how they would react. They would not be proud. They would either mock my success as a fluke or, far worse, they would immediately see it as a new, vast resource to be tapped for their own needs, for Leo's needs. My silence was a shield, protecting the one part of my life that was truly, wholly mine. And now, they were planning to sell the one place on earth that tied me to my past, the very inspiration for my career, to fund a one-day spectacle of gaudy excess for the son they had always valued more. The news of their decision had sent me into a spiral of grief, but after the tears had dried, I called Mr. Grayson. I told him the situation, my voice tight with a pain he immediately understood. "This is what we do, Nina," he had said, his voice calm and steady. "We save places like this from people like them. If you want to save that farm, we will save it." The plan was born from that conversation. It was simple, elegant, and ruthless. Mr. Grayson's firm, operating through an anonymous holding company, would make a ridiculously generous all-cash offer for the farm. An offer so high, no other legitimate buyer could compete. We would let the sale proceed all the way to the final signing. I would give my family every possible chance to reconsider, to see the monumental nature of their betrayal. The final decision, the final veto power, would be mine alone. My secret weapon wasn't just my wealth or my powerful partner. It was the contract they were so eager to sign. As I prepared for the meeting at the lawyer's office, a profound sadness settled over me. I was sad that it had come to this. Sad that I couldn't have a simple, honest conversation with my own parents. Sad that their love was so conditional, their blindness so complete. But beneath the sadness was a layer of hard, unyielding steel. I was no longer sentimental Nina, the dreamy girl whose feelings could be easily dismissed. I was Miss Wallace, a partner in a multi-million-dollar land development firm, and I was about to protect my most valuable asset. The meeting was not an execution. It was a final exam, and I had a terrible feeling. My family was about to fail. The day of the sale arrived with a cold gray sky that perfectly matched the feeling in my soul. I did not dress for a funeral, though that's what it felt like. I dressed for war. I chose a charcoal gray power suit, sharply tailored, and heels that made a firm, confident click on the pavement. I pulled my hair back into a severe, professional knot. There would be no trace of sentimental Nina today. When I looked in the mirror, a stranger looked back at me, a woman my family had never met. Cool, composed, and armed with a quiet, righteous fury. The drive to the lawyer's office was a journey through a gallery of ghosts. Every landmark, every street corner held a memory of my father, of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. I felt a final, foolish ping of hope in my chest, a desperate wish that I would walk into that office and my father would look at me and say, "You were right, Nina. We can't do this." It was a child's hope, and I knew it was destined to be crushed. The law office was as sterile and impersonal as I had imagined. It was a conference room on the 23rd floor of a downtown skyscraper, a space designed for transactions, not for mourning the death of a family's legacy. They were all already there when I arrived, seated around a long, polished mahogany table. The atmosphere was thick with a strange mixture of feigned solemnity and barely concealed, giddy excitement. My brother, Leo, and his fiancée, Tiffany, were huddled together at one end of the table, whispering excitedly over a glossy wedding magazine, their fingers pointing at pictures of extravagant floral arrangements. They were so lost in the fantasy of their perfect day that they seemed to have forgotten entirely what was being sacrificed to pay for it. They were children being handed a credit card with a limit they couldn't comprehend. My parents sat at the center of the table, trying to project an air of grave importance, a performance for the lawyers in the room. But I could see the excitement glittering in their eyes. I could see the relief. The sale of the farm wasn't just funding a wedding. It was erasing decades of their own financial mismanagement, a clean slate bought with my history. My mother saw me first. "Oh, Nina, you came," she said, her voice laced with a patronizing pity. "I wasn't sure if you would. Don't worry, dear. It will all be over soon. Try not to get too emotional." "I'm fine, Mom," I said, my voice colder than I intended. I took the single empty chair at the far end of the table, as far from them as possible, placing my briefcase firmly on the floor beside me. A moment later, the door opened and their lawyer announced that the buyer's representative had arrived. Mr. Alistair Grayson walked into the room. He was the very picture of quiet, old money power, his suit impeccably tailored, his silver hair perfectly coiffed. He radiated an aura of such immense wealth and authority that the entire room seemed to suck in a collective breath. My parents and my uncle were immediately on their feet, their hands outstretched, fawning over him like courtiers before a king. Leo and Tiffany just stared, starstruck. Mr. Grayson was a consummate actor. He greeted my parents with a polite professional warmth. He shook my brother's hand. His eyes swept over me, and for a fraction of a second, he gave me a cool, professional glance of acknowledgement before moving on, giving no sign that we were anything more than strangers. I played my part, offering a small, distant nod. The stage was set. The lawyers began their droning preamble, explaining the legal jargon of the thick contracts that sat in a neat stack in the center of the table. I didn't listen to the words. I knew every clause, every subsection by heart. I had helped draft them. Instead, I watched my family. I watched them nod along, pretending to understand, their eyes glazed over with impatience, eager to get to the final page, to the signatures, to the money. This was it. This was their final chance. The last opportunity for one of them to have a crisis of conscience, to look at what they were doing and say, "Stop, this is wrong." I scanned their faces, searching for a flicker of doubt, of remorse, of love. I found none. I found only greed, entitlement, and a profound, unshakable certainty that they were doing the right thing. The lawyer finally finished. "Well," he said, "if there are no further questions, I believe we are ready for the signatures." He slid the heavy stack of papers towards my father. A desperate final plea rose in my throat. I had to try, one last time. For my grandfather, for myself. "Dad," I said, my voice quiet but clear in the silent room, "are you absolutely sure about this? Once you signed that paper, there is no going back. It's gone forever." Every head turned towards me. My mother shot me a look of pure venom. "Nina, do not start," she hissed. "She's just being dramatic," Leo sighed, rolling his eyes at Tiffany, who giggled. My father looked at me, his expression not one of anger, but of weary impatience. "It's for the best, Nina," he said, his voice flat. "This is what's best for the family." And there it was, the final rejection, the final confirmation that my feelings, my history, my very connection to their shared past meant nothing. The last ember of my foolish hope died, leaving nothing but cold, hard ash. My internal turning point was complete. I had given them their chance. They had failed the test. My father picked up the heavy, expensive fountain pen the lawyer had provided. He unscrewed the cap, the small sound echoing in the silent room. He took a deep, final breath, ready to sacrifice his legacy for his son's temporary happiness. The room was silent with anticipation. The pen touched the paper. "One moment, please." The voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence of the room with the force of a judge's gavel. It was Mr. Grayson. He had been sitting silently beside his own lawyer, a figure of calm, inscrutable power, observing the proceedings with an unreadable expression. Now he was looking at my father, his hand up in a quiet, commanding gesture. My father froze, the pen hovering just above the paper, his expression one of pure, undisguised annoyance. "Is there a problem, Mr. Grayson?" he asked, his tone strained. "Not a problem," Mr. Grayson said smoothly, a slow, deliberate smile touching his lips for the first time that day. He rose to his feet, a commanding presence in the stuffy, generic room. "Just a final point of protocol I seem to have neglected. My apologies." He walked slowly to the head of the table, his eyes sweeping over my parents, then over Leo and Tiffany, before finally landing on me. The look he gave me was not one of a stranger. It was one of deep, conspiratorial respect. A look that said, "Are you ready?" I gave the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. "It is a magnificent piece of land," Mr. Grayson began, his voice a calm, resonant baritone that filled the room. A property with a rich history and, I believe, with the right stewardship, an even richer future. My firm, Grayson and Wallace Land Holdings, is very excited about its potential. I saw my parents puff up with pride at his words. My mother shot a triumphant look at me, as if to say, "See, even this important man understands what a great opportunity this is." However, Mr. Grayson continued, we have a very strict protocol for acquisitions of this nature, especially for properties with such deep historical significance. It's a matter of company policy, a non-negotiable part of our due diligence process. He paused, letting the suspense build, his gaze still fixed on me. "Your partner?" my mother asked, her voice laced with confusion. "Is he not here? Do we need to wait?" "He is not here, no." He then delivered the 10 words that I will remember for the rest of my life, the words my father had planned with me, the words that would change everything. He spoke them slowly, clearly, and with undeniable authority. "I cannot buy this farm without my partner's final approval." The family stared at him, completely baffled. Leo looked at his father, then at the lawyer, his brow furrowed. "I don't understand. Who is your partner? Why wasn't this mentioned before?" Mr. Grayson ignored them. He did not look at them. He did not acknowledge their questions. Instead, he turned his entire body to face me, sitting alone at the far end of the cable. The entire room followed his gaze, and for the first time that day, for the first time in years, my entire family was looking at me, truly looking, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning apprehension. Mr. Grayson's expression softened into one of polite, professional deference. And then he asked the question that detonated their world. "Well, Nina," he asked, his voice ringing with a quiet, devastating clarity in the silent room, "as the majority partner and the co-founder of our firm, what do you say? Do we have your approval to proceed with the acquisition?" The sound of my father dropping the expensive fountain pen on the mahogany table was like a gunshot. It clattered and rolled, leaving a small black streak of ink on the polished surface. But no one noticed, no one moved, no one breathed. The sequence of emotions that washed over my family's faces was a sight to behold. It was a brutal, beautiful, and terrible thing. I saw my mother's confusion curdle into disbelief, her hand flying to her throat as she choked on a silent gasp. I saw my brother's smug entitlement melt away, leaving behind a pale, slack-jawed shock. I saw his fiancée, Tiffany, staring at me, her dreams of a lavish 6-figure wedding visibly dying in her wide, horrified eyes. And I saw my father. He looked at me, his face ashen, his eyes filled with the look of such profound, soul-crushing comprehension that it almost broke my heart. He finally understood. He understood my useless degree, my boring office job, my quiet confidence. He understood the full, catastrophic scope of his betrayal and the quiet, hidden power of the daughter he had dismissed his entire life. The entire room was silent, waiting for my answer. For the first time in my life, my entire family was waiting, with bated breath, to hear what I had to say. I held their future in the palm of my hand, and I knew exactly what my answer would be. The silence in the conference room was a tangible thing, a heavy, suffocating blanket woven from my family's shattered expectations. Every eye was on me. Mr. Grayson's question, "Do we have your approval to proceed?" hung in the air, a formal, polite query that held the power to detonate a family. I looked at each of them, truly looked at them, my gaze sweeping across the table. I saw my mother, her face a mask of pale, desperate hope, her mind already spending the money. I saw my brother Leo and his fiancée Tiffany, their expressions greedy and expectant, their entire future predicated on the destruction of my entire past. And I saw my father, his eyes pleading with me, not for forgiveness, but for complicity. He wanted me to sign off on my own heartbreak to make his life easier. In that long, silent moment, I felt the last vestiges of sentimental Nina fall away like a snake shedding its skin. I was not the family's emotional shock absorber anymore. I was not the quiet, dreamy girl to be patronized. I was Miss Wallace, the majority partner of Grayson and Wallace Land Holdings, and this was a business decision. I finally rose to my feet, my movement slow and deliberate. The scrape of my chair on the floor sounded like a thunderclap in the silent room. First, I addressed my partner. "Thank you for asking, Alistair," I said, my voice as calm and steady as a frozen river. "And thank you for your faith in this project. But no, we will not be proceeding with the acquisition. The deal is off." Then I turned my full attention to my family. "The farm," I said, my voice low but carrying to every corner of the room, "is not for sale." I looked directly at my father, my heart aching for the man he should have been. "It was never just land, Dad. It was the oak tree you fell out of when you were 7. It was the barn where Grandpa taught me about honor and hard work. It was the place Mom's ashes were scattered by the creek. It was never, ever just an asset on a balance sheet." My gaze shifted to my brother, his face now a picture of dawning, horrified disbelief. "And it is not a piggy bank to be smashed open for a one-day party, Leo," I said, my voice hardening. "The wedding you and Tiffany want will have to be paid for. Paid for with something you have earned, not something you have stolen from the memory of our family." The dam of their composure broke. "How could you?" my mother shrieked, her voice cracking with fury. "After everything we've done for you, you selfish, vengeful girl, you would ruin your own brother's happiness out of pure spite." "My happiness?" Leo sputtered, his face turning a blotchy, furious red. "Nina, you can't do this. This is my future, Tiffany's future. You've destroyed everything." Tiffany, beside him, had dissolved into theatrical, gulping sobs, her perfect wedding turning to dust before her eyes. I did not engage. I did not argue. There was nothing left to say. I had spent a lifetime trying to explain my feelings to them, and they had never once listened. They would not start now. I simply looked at my father, whose face was ashen, his eyes filled with a look of utter, soul-crushing defeat. He knew. He finally knew the true cost of what he had been willing to do. I bent down, picked up my briefcase, and gave a single respectful nod to Mr. Grayson and his legal team. "Thank you for your time," I said. Then, without another glance at the imploding remnants of my family, I turned and walked out of the conference room, my heels clicking a steady, confident rhythm on the polished floor. I left them behind in the wreckage of their own making, their shouts and sobs a chaotic, impotent symphony of their greed. The weeks that followed were quiet, sad unraveling. I didn't answer their calls, which ranged from furious to pleading to manipulative. I heard through a sympathetic cousin what was happening. Tiffany, seeing that the river of money had dried up, had called off the engagement, telling Leo she couldn't possibly marry into a family with such financial instability. My parents, I was told, were barely speaking, consumed by a bitter, circular argument of blame. My father had locked himself away, heartbroken over the loss of his legacy and the loss of his daughter's respect. The family I knew had fractured, not because of what I had done, but because my actions had finally exposed the deep, rotten cracks that had been there all along. A year has passed. Through Grayson and Wallace, I used my own capital to buy out my uncle's share of the farm and invested heavily in revitalizing it. It is no longer a struggling, neglected property. It's a thriving, sustainable organic farm and a small educational retreat for agricultural students, exactly as my grandfather had always dreamed it could be. I didn't save it to hoard it. I saved it to make it better. My father visited me at the farm last month. It was the first time we had spoken in a year. He looked older, humbled. He walked the fields with me, his eyes full of a sad wonder at what I had built. "He would be so proud of you, Nina," he had whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Your grandfather, and I am so sorry." It was a real apology, finally. An apology for not just that one day, but for a lifetime of not truly seeing me. As for my mother and Leo, I do not know what has become of them. I chose to let them go. This evening, I stood on the porch of the old farmhouse, watching the sun set over the rolling hills, the same hills my family was so willing to sell. They had tried to sell my past to pay for my brother's future. Instead, I had claimed my past, and in doing so, had built a future for myself that was stronger and more authentic than anything they could have imagined. My vindication wasn't in their ruin. It was here, in the scent of the rich soil, in the quiet dignity of my grandfather's legacy, in the profound peace of knowing I had protected the things that money can never, ever buy. A truly powerful story about legacy, respect, and the price of greed. What do you think of Nina's final decision? Was she right to do what she did? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love to hear your perspective on these complex family dramas. If you enjoyed this satisfying story of vindication, please show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe for more daily stories of karma and justice. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.